Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's John Campea, and this is Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we take our second half of the show to take your live comments and questions. However, what if you're one of those people who watches the show one of the other 22 hours during the day and you can't be there live to ask live questions? Well, that's why we have Mailbag. Down in the description of almost all of our videos, you can see a tip link. Click on that there, and you can submit a question or comment, thought or a theory for us to read on Mailbag. And if we deem your comment, question, thought, or theory to be appropriate for our show, we'll read it right here. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to take the questions you guys have been sending in, but I won't be answering them by myself. I got Robert Meyer Burnett here. Robert, how you doing?
John, I'm doing good. You know, today is June 6th, and on June 6th, 1944, Operation Overlord occurred, where the Allies landed at Normandy. Of course, Steven Spielberg did Saving Private Ryan. It gave birth to the Call of Duty games. It's a good day to, talk about the greatness of collaboration between countries, and like Canada and the United States.
And others, by the way. And it was the inspiration for one of my favorite types of levels on Unreal Tournament. It was called Overlord. I love that. All right, guys, we are here to take your thoughts, comments, and questions. So we're going to do that right now. So let's get things started. And we're going to get started off with Paul C., who writes in 1 of 5. I regularly hear you and Rob talking about Superman, and I admit that I have a problem with your vision of the character. You clearly say that Superman is too powerful a character to come up with a lot of interesting storylines in movies. Sorry to disagree, but which Superman are you talking about? Golden Age, Silver Age, John, how do you pronounce that last name?
John Byrne.
Byrne. I always said Byrne, but somebody told me it was Byron. I was like, all right.
Byrne.
John Byrne, New 52, Bruce Timm's one, TV show ones. To say that he's invincible is quite contradictory, knowing that his powers have fluctuated over time. What prevents a director from developing the power of the character throughout a saga, and to change the stakes and his stakes and the dangerousness of the enemies in relation to this development? What if Parasite steals Clark's powers to become more supremacist tyrant? What if increasingly skilled Metallos were created by Lex and the United Nations, like the Syndrome robots in The Incredibles, to keep Supes from acting like in Peace on Earth and getting more and more strong by pushing his limits? What if Livewire becomes an eco-terrorist under Thunder Goddess, thanks to the powers of Apocalypse? What if Superman frees Mongol slaves on Warworld, which revolves around a red sun? Come on, guys, enough with Lex or alien invasions, a bit of originality. All right, well, here's the thing, Paul. Nothing that you just mentioned is original. I mean, really, it's just variations on different tropes we've seen a million times, right? But that is true of a lot of storytelling. Like one of the great artists said, there is nothing original anymore. It's the creativity that gets put into the copying, which is kind of ironic. All right, so first of all, you do raise a good point. Like when you say Superman, which Superman are you talking about? I often go back to a great story, one of my favorites actually from Comic-Con. It was before Superman Returns came out, and somebody at Comic-Con asked Bryan Singer, the director of the film, they asked him, why did you change Superman's costume? To which Bryan Singer replied, changed it from what? There are 23 different variations of the Superman costume in the comic books. So when you say, why did you change it? I ask, changed it from what? And what you're saying is true. There are different eras of Superman that we've had, much like with Batman. People say Batman doesn't kill. I beg to differ. There have been many times in the comics where Batman does kill and acknowledge that he has killed before. I guess the thing is, though, what is the common understanding of Superman? Who and what is Superman today for how we all know him? And he is the ultimate superhero. He is the Superman as defined really in Injustice Gods Among Us, whereas he's the one superhero that if he went bad, everything's going wrong because he's Superman. Now, when you have that kind of a character, none of us here on this show has ever said that makes it impossible to tell good stories. What we have said is that it creates a unique challenge, and it makes it very challenging to come up with stories for a character like that, who is above moral reproach, who is above physical reproach. You really have to struggle a bit to come up with something. And so you come up to, again, these same old Superman villains we've heard in things before. Well, it's Brainiac or it's Metallo or something along those lines, right? But just what you're writing proves that coming up with a good, interesting story for the Superman is kind of challenging because there is a limited well from which you can draw. When you're a character like, I don't know, Batman, I mean, that's a guy who's susceptible to time, age, weather, physical harm, mental stress, blah, blah, as much as any human being in the world. You are filled with possibilities and directions you can go for whatever kind of story you want to go with him, because from physical threats, I mean, anything can be a physical threat, so you can come up with a lot of creative different things to do. Even with characters like Aquaman, who's not invincible, there's a lot of things that you can do with Aquaman, stuff like that. With the Superman, it's a little bit different, Rob, because we've pointed out, on the show many times, like there is nobody on Earth who can go and pose a threat to Superman. So you're kind of limited to the same old things. Well, it's either General Zod or it's Brainiac or it's, something like that. Now, you can do what you were suggesting, which is fundamentally change our understanding of Superman. Say, okay, what if this Superman, what if bullets won't pierce his skin, but they can hurt him pretty bad? Or what if he can't lift a military tank over his head? Okay, yes. It's like what I've always said about the character of Robin. You cannot do a comic book accurate Robin, because in a live motion movie where things are supposed to feel a little bit more grounded, a little bit more realistic, you cannot have the Batman running around with an 11-year-old child with a stick. That's called child abuse and child endangerment. You can't do that. But if you want to adapt the material and change the character as we traditionally know him, make him an 18-year-old Robin, a 21-year-old Robin, maybe visit after he's already become Nightwing. Then you can do that. With Superman, yeah, if you want to fundamentally change Superman to create avenues and opportunities for other types of storytelling, you can do that. But would such an alteration turn off or alienate a lot of the hardcore fans? Again, it's not an overcomable problem, but it's, as we've always say, it does make telling good stories with Superman a little bit more challenging than with other characters. Rob, I mean, this is a character you have, number one, followed your whole life. Number two, you even worked on a movie that had Superman in it.
You brought up footage I shot of Bryan Singer at Comic-Con when he answered that question.
Oh, were you the one who shot that footage?
I shot that footage.
Oh my goodness. So what I'm talking about
I know.
here.
And that, by the way, you told it exactly as it happened. That is exactly what happened. As a matter of fact, it was made by, what's really interesting is I was working with Adam Robitel, who directed the Escape Room movies. So I gave him that footage and he cut it together in one of Brian's blogs about going to Comic-Con. And that's where that footage absolutely exists. It's interesting. The thing about what our viewer said, he brought up all of these comic book stories, Mongol and Warworld. And I would say, okay, all of that, everything he said's correct. But how do you explain to a movie-going audience who Mongol is?
Or what
Warworld is? I mean, you have to establish all of this. And in a world where we love Man of Steel. Oh, I think Man of Steel is not just a great Superman movie, it's also a great science fiction movie. It works on both of those levels. You create a character also, we kind of knew who Zod was, but the opening of the film shows you Krypton. It shows you Zod. It shows you Jor-El. It shows you exactly what that conflict is, so you understand it. Well, how do you, in our world today, when we make Superman movies, how do you introduce Mongol, who is a giant, basically yellow, hulking Thanos type of a character? Would that work with the Superman we know? I mean, a giant, crazy yellow alien and his whole planet of Warworld on our world when Amy Adams is Lois Lane, how do you make that work? I'm not saying you can't, but it's a tall order. And if you want to keep a Superman movie grounded and not spin off into craziness, it's a tough thing. And that's why Superman movies are hard to do.
And to your point, like all the options that he came up with, these are all options that are extraterrestrial.
Right.
Like, and by extraterrestrial, I don't mean ET, but I mean off of world. It's like you can't tell a story. Even when trying to come up with stuff, it's difficult to come up with what's a story that can happen in Metropolis? What can happen, in the USA? What can happen here? And again, not impossible.
No.
And we've never said it's impossible. We've said it's challenging.
You know, one of my favorite comic book stories ever with Superman is Clark Kent wants to do a story in Europe. He just wants to go. As Superman, he could fly there and cover the story. But he has to do it under the guise of Clark Kent. So he has to go to Perry White, his editor, and say, yo, I would love to go cover this story in Europe. And Perry says, well, okay, I'll let you do that, but you have to cover this supermarket opening. You have to cover these 3 local events here in Metropolis. And if you turn those stories into me at the end of today, I'll let you go to Europe and cover this story. Of course, all hell breaks loose. The toy maker comes and attacks Metropolis. And suddenly Clark Kent, the reporter, has to be Superman and save Metropolis. And at the end of the day, he's all like depressed, like, great. I'm not going to get, as Clark Kent, I can't go to Europe. I had to save the city, but I didn't get to turn in the reports that his boss wanted. And at the end of the story, Lois has filed the stories for him because they're married at the time. And Perry says, you know what, Clark, this is great. Thank you. I'll send you to Europe.
Here's your plane ticket.
And it was so great because it was, as Superman's being Superman, you forget that he also takes pride in being a good reporter.
Right.
And it was such a wonderful human story. Now, I don't know if you could put that in a movie, but you could make it like the first 30 minutes of a movie where it's full of action and the city's assaulted. But you realize that, I mean, Superman still takes pride in being a reporter. And that's the kind of story you might see on Superman and Lois. I don't know if they would do it in a movie, but when I read that story, I'm like, of course, because Superman still takes pride in his work as Clark Kent. He wants Clark Kent to be a great reporter. I mean, when you watch the Adventures of Superman series in the 50s, George Reeves, who played Superman, he was a baller. Like, he was like the dude. He would scoop every other reporter. I mean, he was awesome. That's kind of what I want to see from Superman, and it keeps it human. Not crazy, weird extraterrestrial threats.
All right. And a good question to write in, man. And again, it just kind of goes again to the point that Superman is granddaddy of all superheroes.
Yeah.
But it's challenging to tell compelling, interesting, dare we say, grounded stories with them. All right. Let's move on here. Next up. Thanks again for that, Paul C. Appreciate that, man. Dirt on My Boots writes, I'm enjoying the ObiWan show, but the music is baffling. Why is it so generic? Part of what made me love Star Wars is the music. The Obi-Wan trailer even used Duel of the Fates. Imperial March should be at least sort of present. Can they not use OG themes? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in. And could they not use OG themes? Yes. But it also points down, I would be, remiss if I didn't mention that I have myself, as a Star Wars fan, sometimes criticized Star Wars for overuse of the familiar musical scores, right? And I guarantee you, if they had played the Imperial March, even though there was a couple of moments where it would have been appropriate if they wanted to, although we never actually, there was never a Imperial military parade.
Right.
Somewhere where you'd just naturally hear the Imperial anthem of the Empire. Absolutely. But that wasn't really here.
No.
And I think had they played the Imperial March, you probably would have seen a bunch of complaining online saying, all they got is that. They just keep going back to the Imperial March. I mean, and when they don't put it in, it's like, why didn't they have the Imperial March? It's kind of a no-win situation there. I mean, listen, I don't disagree that the music hasn't really stood out to me.
No.
That being said, sometimes to me, a music bleeding into the background of a scene and just becoming a part of the scenery of a movie that you don't even notice it. I believe, like we talked about, the one composer who once said, the job of sometimes good score in a movie is not to be noticed. When your score can just elevate certain emotions and themes going on, and then the listener or viewer doesn't even pick out the music itself, you've really done your job well. And so while I agree there's no big Superman theme or Indiana Jones main theme or a Duel of the Fates here, I personally think the music's doing its job. Although granted, it's not a soundtrack I'm going to be running out and listening to. Rob, what have you been thinking about the music?
I do think the music is a little understated, but like you eloquently pointed out, when we first heard the Imperial March in Empire, General Rykian just says, it's a good bet the Empire knows we're here. Cut to the Imperial Starfleet.
Yeah.
And then you're introduced to the Super Star Destroyer, and it's like powerful. Like you said, you don't just have the Imperial military, you got the Imperial Starfleet and a 20-mile long Star Destroyer that Vader's in command of. It's big. It's huge. I mean, the Imperial March, you don't just play it if Vader shows up. You know,
Right.
you got to have the majesty and the power of the entire empire. And I understand that. I do, though, wish that there is a more, I think it's more of a trend that music doesn't overpower. Like if you looked at old shows, like the old Star Trek, for instance, had really strong, they had some of the great TV composers of the day write really bombastic music. When Rick Berman was producing Star Trek in the 80s, he went the opposite direction. He said, look, that was a little too 60s. And his music that Dennis McCarthy did, a little bit more understated. You look at the Orville, big themes, big music. So it depends on the show. And I think, like you said, the music is doing its job. There's great Star Wars themes. But if you heard the French horn theme, you know, that the Force theme, whatever it's called, it would get tiresome very fast. And I think these shows need their own identities. And I do love John Williams' theme he wrote for ObiWan. You can get it on Spotify. It's a great piece of music.
But to the viewer's point, I will say this, though. I'd be hard-pressed right now to hum any of the bars from ObiWan music right now.
It's true, because they haven't used it very much.
Yeah, it hasn't really stood out on its own. And so, yeah, in that regards, it's a little weaker. Still, the show's still working for me, though. All right, thanks a lot for writing that in, man. Next up, we got 2 + 2 = 5 writes. Hey, John or Rob, both of us are here. I noticed that there are a lot of video game movies, TV shows centered on Batman right now, which makes sense since he is the moneymaker for DC. But do you think it is too much? Is there such a thing as Batman burnout for fans? Thanks. All right, thanks for writing that in 2 + 2. Rob, not an unusual question. This is a question that's actually been asked for years about how much Batman is too much Batman. And there's a strength and a weakness. All right. First of all, here's the strength that prevents it from being too much burnout. There hasn't been a lot of the same Batman.
Right.
We got, what we get? 2 movies with Ben Affleck's Batman. Well, if you want to count the Suicide Squad, I guess you could say it pops up, but we had 2 or 3 movies with Ben Affleck's Batman. We had 3 films of Christian Bale's Batman, which is a very different Batman. We've had 1 Robert Pattinson version of the Batman, which again is a very different Batman. We've had the animated Batman. We've had, that's been the thing. We haven't had a lot of one iteration of Batman. And so Batman has almost become this nebulous thing that is the crown jewel IP in the DC, roster. But we've never stuck with one Batman enough to get tired of him. And then even things like, Gotham Knights, new things coming out. Well, it's the Batman world, but there's no Batman.
He's dead.
He's dead. And apparently dead.
Yeah.
He comes back in the show.
Of course
I
he
don't
does.
even have to watch this show to tell you he comes back at some point.
He's not really dead. It's part of a long game he's playing.
And then even in Titans, they finally met Batman in Titans, who was from Game of Thrones there. What was his name? Mormont?
Yeah.
What's the first?
Jorah Mormont.
That's it, Jorah Mormont, right?
Ian Glenn.
That was a really good casting for that, by the way.
I thought so, too.
As an older Batman, that was a really cool casting. So I guess the thing is this. We were talking a little bit about Superman a minute ago, about how, the very fact that the nature of the character makes what you can do with him from an antagonist point of view very limited. One of the great things about Batman as a character is his complete humanity.
Mm-hmm.
As a human being, as a regular man, there is something that is more identifiable with him. Up until the age of 18, we all view Batman as a legitimate possible career choice. I would dare say up to the age of 60, all men kind of look at Bruce Wayne, especially after The Dark Knight Returns.
Even
now,
after, if you're a Batman Beyond fan, you could be 85
up to the age of
and be
70,
Batman.
80, whatever. Batman is a legitimate career path you can consider doing. And so there's something infinitely relatable with the character that not a lot of other superheroes have. That also comes, there's never been a character that represents battling your own inner demons and the darkness and the brokenness of being human. Every other comic book character that's tried to do it since is really just kind of piggybacking off of the way Batman did it. And all of us struggle with our inner darkness and our inner demon. Again, with Batman, there's something so relatable. And because he's so relatable, because he is a regular human being that Superman says is the most dangerous individual on Earth, that makes this character infinitely interesting. There's so much you can do with them. And because of that and the attachment with the audience, there's a lot of different ways you can approach them. We mentioned all these different Batmans already, right? We mentioned Ben Affleck's, we mentioned Christian Bale's, we mentioned Robert Pattinson's. All very different expressions, iterations, all cover different aspects of the Batman mythos. And so, you know what? You ask, are we in danger of Batman burnout? And I would simply say, because we've never had one continuous Batman, I really don't sense any kind of a Batman burnout. If anything, I have sensed a growing hunger for that definitive Batman to come. I mean, that's because, listen, I love Ben Affleck's Batman. He's my favorite Batman so far. But, you know, that Batman didn't work for everybody. I loved Robert Pattinson's Batman. But I love him as a character in a movie. I don't know if, to me, that is the definitive Batman. I think the definitive Batman is somewhere between Ben Affleck's Batman and Christian Bale's Batman. But yeah, so I would say the opposite of causing burnout. I think it is causing a greater hunger in a lot of people waiting for that one definitive Batman. Anyway, Rob, he raises a good point. There's a lot of Batman or Batman-related content coming out. Are we in danger of Batman burnout?
I don't think so, because, first of all, people love Batman. And I remember, like, in the 80s when I was really reading comic books religiously every Wednesday, there was Justice League, the comedy version, and there was Batman and the Outsiders that was really goofy. It was, and Batman was in both. And they were the goofy Batman.
What about Batman with Scooby-Doo? Don't forget, Batman teamed up with the Mystery Gang.
Yes, and I think that was sort of a vestige of Adam West and Burt Ward's Batman. But I like that. It was funny because they played against what Batman was supposed to be and made it funny. Like, there was a famous thing early on in the comic where Guy Gardner, the Green Lantern, and Batman get into it, and Batman takes him out with one punch. Takes out a Green Lantern, and all the other, like, Blue Beetles, like, laughing, going, one punch. And it's really funny because it still honored Batman, but it was funny. And then you had a bunch of other Batman comics that were really serious at the same time as when Dark Knight Returns came out. You know, you had older Batman. I think the great thing about Batman is it is a storytelling medium where Batman is, it's all things to all stories. As long as you stay true
to what action, it can be detective, it can be horror, it can be like all that
and
stuff.
They've done it all. And the thing is, it's almost like you could do an anthology series like The Twilight Zone where every story is different, but Batman or different aspects of Batman is in each story, because we never get tired of him. Because Batman can do all different kinds of things. And that's why I think Matt Reeves' The Batman leans more into the detective, which we never saw really before. Where, I mean, I was surprised, John, when we were watching that movie together, that when you first meet Batman, he like walks in to a crime scene that's got 100 different cops there.
Yeah.
And he like walks through the cops like they have to part. We'd never seen that before. And I remember thinking in the theater, like, wow, this is new. You know, Batman always shows up. No, the cops know him. They don't even like him.
And they're intimidated by him.
Yeah, intimidated. They don't like him. They're like, why is he allowed to come to these crime scenes? Even the chief of police, because Gordon isn't the chief yet. Why do you bring him here? I mean, that was interesting. And suddenly he was like, I was seeing Batman anew. I'd never seen that before. And suddenly I'm interested. And that's what I think Batman is. The reason we don't have fatigue is Batman is a storytelling device that can not just be a man, but can be the fulcrum which all of these stories can sprout from. And that's cool.
That's good. All right, let's move on here. Next up, we got Nerdy Teacher, who writes, hey guys, so I guess John is not a fan of my theory about the Force vision. Oh, I remember this. To be honest, I would be disappointed as well if it turns out to be right. As you said, we would be robbed of 4 episodes. Hope I'm wrong. So for those of you who don't know, I believe this came in during our ObiWan after show. Right. I think it was during that. And Nerdy Teacher had written in and say, hey, what if we find out after episode 4 or 5 that everything that's happened since episode 1 has all just been a dream?
Yeah.
It's been a Force vision that Qui-Gon has been giving Obi-Wan, saying, Obi-Wan, if you don't get yourself into shape, this is what could happen. This is how everything could be terrible. And while that would check a couple of boxes, how do you explain the death of the Grand Inquisitor when in Rebels he's still there? I mean, what about the contradiction when Vader said the last time we met, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff? It would check those boxes. It would make all that okay. But it would ultimately mean that we watched 4 or 5 episodes of television pointlessly. Ever since the whole thing, what show was it that did, was it Dallas that did it? Was that
Yeah. The Bobby Ewing
back in the
shower.
day, like Dallas had this one season. For those of you who don't remember, I mean, even I think I was in grade school when this was going on, but
Right.
the show Dallas, they did apparently, like, I never watched it, but they did a whole season where you find out in the final episode of the season, it was all a dream of one of the characters. It was all just a dream. I mean, that was jumping the shark before jumping the shark. I mean, it was, and if they were to do that, I, who am enjoying ObiWan so far, would be outraged. So I can't see it happening. Rob, you've given any more thought to this? Do you think it's something they could do?
I mean, look, I think they could do it, but it would depend how. Like it would have to be, we're about to see episode 4. It would have to be done very early on, and you'd need to do it really well. Unless Liam Neeson himself shows up, I would say it's a bad idea. But if like he shows up and you have a whole scene when Liam Neeson, and you have a whole episode where Liam Neeson and Obi-Wan, I don't know, go over to the past and you see flashbacks of the Clone Wars with Anakin, and I mean, it could be epic. And then I'd be like, okay, I'll buy it. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I mean, to do something like that is a cheat. First of all, it's a cheat.
Total cheat.
And if you're going to cheat, you better back it up with the greatest 3 hours of Star Wars television I've ever seen. Otherwise, we've wasted our time.
See, I could see doing one episode like that.
Right.
Where by the end of the episode, you found out what was in that episode was just an object lesson that Qui-Gon was giving Obi-Wan through a vision.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And if Qui-Gon was there,
which he will be, I think.
And they went, that could be cool.
But to say the last 4 episodes you just watched was all that, yeah, I don't think they can do that.
No.
All right. By the way, guys, we want to take a second and thank the sponsor of today's episode of Mailbag. You might notice, John, your shave looks closer and smoother than it's ever looked. That's right. It's because of our sponsor, Harry's. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Harry's. Now, I happen to be one of these guys that was really fortunate enough to grow up with an absolutely amazing father, Pasquale Campea. And guys, with Father's Day coming up, what better time to share the gift of the Harry's experience with your dad or significant male figure in your life? Right now, you can get a Harry's starter set for just $3 or get free engraving on any premium shave kit for dad when you go to harrys.com/Campea. Harry's gift sets are the perfect gift for any guy in your life, and their Winston razor handle is engravable, so you can make Father's Day even more memorable. Guys, I've been using Harry's razors for a while now, and I can tell you my skin has never felt this damn good. My shaves have never been this smooth. I love Harry's. There's no pricey gimmicks or unnecessary bells or whistles. Their customer satisfaction is the highest in the shaving industry, and there's no risk to try. If you don't like your shave, it's on them. And right now, Harry's is giving their best offer to the John Campea Show listeners. New Harry's customers can get a starter set for just $3, or for a limited time through Father's Day, get free engraving on any premium shave set at harrys.com/Campea. There's never been a better time to try Harry's. Go to harrys.com/Campea to start your own Harry's journey, or to save a few bucks on a gift for a special dad in your life. And a big thank you to our friends at Harry's for sponsoring this episode of Mailbag. All right, guys, let's keep on going now. We're going to pick things up here with Mike G, who writes, I'd like to see a movie club episode about Superman Returns. Yeah, that probably won't happen. A great Superman flick with a bad rap. Also, when will the MCU finally give a shout out to Jack Kirby? He did all the creative lifting for Stan Lee, who was more of an editor and brand ambassador. Well, we'll focus on the first part of your question here about Superman Returns. Look, we've talked on this show before, and I've said it many, many times in the past. Superman Returns is a good movie. It just may not be a strong comic book movie. And there is a distinct difference there, because I think a lot of the things that we look for when we go into a comic book movie, some great action, hero versus villain, all that kind of stuff, Superman Returns lacks a lot of that. I mean, the ultimate action scene is him fighting a falling plane. So, I mean, or a bullet bouncing off his eyeball, which, by the way, is one of the coolest shots in any superhero movie. That the bullet just going ahead and hitting Superman in the eyeball and flattening and falling to the ground. That is a great shot. But it is the character study of the God-Man. And they takes, we were talking at the beginning of this episode, somebody writing and talking about, is it really difficult to tell stories about Superman? I mean, what they did with that movie, it really broke it down to, okay, what is his struggle? Because he ain't going to struggle in an arm wrestling match against anybody. So
No.
what's his struggle? His struggle is that he's still ultimately alone. And he's dealing with the fact that, number one, we find out that he's been searching for his world, but his world's gone. Krypton's gone. He thought maybe there could be a remnant out there, but it's not. It's gone. So now he's back on his adopted world. And as much as he loves his adopted world and the world loves him, there's this great scene in the first act of the film where he's just hovering in outer space, outside, just on Earth's orbit, stand there, eyes closed, and you still hear everything going on. And you realize the solitude and the aloneness that he feels, that as much as he wants to be a part of this world, he will always, in a way, be separate from it. And ultimately, too, that expresses itself and it manifests in a way that his relationship with Lois had broken, right? I mean, on many levels, this is a really good story, but not a great. Listen, you would be forgiven. You're going to a movie called Superman. You expect to see some things and they didn't get it. Could we do a movie club on it? Absolutely not. I mean, movie club is really for the celebration of some of the biggest and most beloved movies of all time. And while I really do appreciate Superman Returns, I do. It is not one of the more beloved movies of all time. Anyway, Rob, what do you think?
I know. I feel exactly the same way. I obviously have a great affection for that movie because I was there when they made it the whole time. But I do think that also, they made him cut a lot of that movie out. There was a 30-minute longer version where you realize that it was Luthor and Kal Penn that trumped up this evidence that Krypton was still there. And they sent him off on a fool's errand to find it. So there was a lot more of the movie they unfortunately cut down. I don't know if that would make it a better movie, but there was just more of it, a lot of more meat on its bones. But like you said, it is. I think it was audacious to do that movie, but in our world today, where we want to see MCU movies that are full of conflict and action sequences, and even look, one of the reasons I love Man of Steel so much is the Battle of Metropolis. You actually, for the very first time, are shown what it would be like when two superhuman creatures from Krypton are fighting over an American city and the way they would punch each other and the actual power unleashed. We'd never seen that before. And it was amazing, and you realize how dangerous it actually is. Well, once you've seen that, that's what you want to see. I mean, Superman Returns, there's manhole covers blowing up when the gas mains are exploding. It's not that it's bad, but what are the stakes? I mean, Superman's fighting against a natural disaster or a man-made disaster caused by Luthor, but it's not exactly satisfying.
Yeah.
I mean,
look, the Superman lifting a mountain.
Yeah, and
Cool.
that's, I mean, the story, I don't think it ever really reconciled that between what the audience wanted to see and what the story was that they were telling. They needed to figure out a way to, although there's a lot of moving stuff in that film. I mean, when Superman is sacrificed, and so it's just not what we want as like you pointed out, a Superman movie.
By the way, I should mention, Henry Cavill is my all-time favorite Superman. Brandon Routh was awesome.
Yeah.
I have, ever since that movie, I became a big Brandon Routh fan. And whether he's in, what's the name of it? Something Make a Porno. It's the Kevin Smith.
Oh, yeah, Kevin. Yeah.
It's something in Zack and Mary Make a Porno. Yeah. I loved his appearance in that. I've loved seeing him in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I love him in Legends of Tomorrow. I'm just a big Brandon Routh fan, and I loved him in that. All right, let's keep going on here now. Next up, we got John Cena, and we got to read his name because we can't see him, who writes, "Hey, John/Rob, the early reviews for Jurassic look very disappointing." I don't know where you're reading that. Major complaints saying it's boring and uninspiring like the previous films. Do you think they made one too many sequels? Should this be a sign for the franchise to end? Well, I mean, there's a couple things to address here, John. First of all, they've already said this is the end of the franchise. Right. They said, now I don't believe for a second we're not going to get another dinosaur movie at some point, but they're saying this is it. I mean, that's what they're saying. This is the end of the franchise. But I've seen a few people writing stuff like that, and I think it's become an echo chamber. Because a little bit earlier today, maybe about an hour before we started the show today, I went and looked it up. It's got an 88% right now. Now, granted, that may drop. It might. But as of right now, it's got an 88%. So how this echo chamber started about, well, I heard somebody say that it was bad. Then the person who heard you say that said, I heard somebody say it was bad. Then the person who heard them say it. And so all of a sudden it becomes a thing. Now, again, I have not seen the movie yet. I'm supposed to be seeing it in a few hours, but I haven't seen the movie yet. So I cannot say that the movie is great, nor can I say that it's terrible at this point. All I'm saying is, well, I've heard the echo chamber, when I actually look at the people who saw and reviewed the film, it's got an 88%. Now look, nothing in the Jurassic World series has come close to the original Jurassic Park. I would say, though, that I believe the Jurassic World series compares very favorably to all the other Jurassic Park movies. I think they compare very well. I actually enjoy the Jurassic World movies. Again, nowhere near as good as the original Jurassic Park. But still, I think the Jurassic World movies have had some fun, imagination, things like that, and some downsides, absolutely. Don't completely love the films, but I mean, I enjoy them quite a bit. And I think the trailers for this new one have looked really good. I think they've tried to recapture that sense of awe that we haven't been able to have again since the original Jurassic Park. We become desensitized. That's understandable. But yeah, as of right now, which could change, but as of right now, the reviews are actually quite strong. Anyway, what's your expectations like going into Jurassic World?
Like I said, I just want to see dinosaurs eat people. I mean, but when you really think about it, I mean, I think there's an inherent flaw in this premise, and that has been shown in other movies. Like you said, in the first Jurassic Park, there is awe.
Yeah, and we've never seen that stuff.
You've never seen it before, and you're looking at these dinosaurs. Well, other than the fact that it would be like making a movie about polar bears. Like polar bears, they exist, they're here, but when polar bears get in proximity to human beings, well, then they
not a good idea.
Not a good idea. But that's all that you really have. Like, so the premise is in Jurassic Park, they've brought back dinosaurs. The dinosaurs, things are not going to, they're going to run amok. You know, they're going to, you can't contain it. Life will find a way. And so it's great. But beyond that, what's your story? Now, in Jurassic World Dominion, my whole thing is like, well, these idiots, dinosaurs got out into the world. They've reproduced. Now they're everywhere. What are you going to do about it? They're running around Vatican City. They're running around New York City. They're in drive-ins. You know, you can't get rid of dinosaurs, and they're going to eat you. But beyond that, because they have to feed, dinosaurs got to eat. What's the story? Like, are you going to get rid of them? Are you going to create some genetic virus to get rid of all the dinosaurs? Can you even do that? Because life will find a way. I think that, in a way, a Jurassic Park movie has the same problem that a Superman movie has. How do you make the very existence of dinosaurs into something more than just that? What's the story? Like, dinosaurs are out, they're everywhere. Okay. Then what? Like, we've got all these characters. What are they supposed to do? You know, fly around and bomb the dinosaurs? Do you drug the dinosaurs? Like, if they're just wandering around, they'd be like, well, we have to get rid of all the cockroaches in the world. But you can't do that. There's millions of them. What is the story? And I think that there's a reason why the Jurassic Park movies have kind of been all the same, because the threat is, will our characters get eaten?
And like you said, once you cover the initial premise, it's why I get very fatigued with zombie stuff. It's like, listen, you can have different characters with different backgrounds and everything, but at the end of the day, zombie films are pretty much all the same. Some are better than others. I mean, it does raise an interesting question too about, you know, this Jurassic World Dominion was kind of looked at as being the big blockbuster, especially post Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, what was going to be the next big blockbuster? Traditionally, the Jurassic Park movies and the Jurassic World movies have all done real well. But is a fatigue slipping in? I don't sense the same excitement for this movie as I have with previous Jurassic movies. So how is this thing going to do? I think a lot will depend on the reviews, the word of mouth, things like that. Now, opening weekend, it's going to have a big opening weekend. How big? I'm not sure. Will it be 200 million big?
Right.
Will it be 125 million big? I'm not really sure. I just know it'll be big. So have a big opening weekend. But after that opening weekend, once the actual reviews become more propagated throughout and the word of mouth starts spreading and stuff like that, that will have a lot to do with what happens after that. And how big this movie will ultimately end up being is not going to be predicated on the opening weekend. It's going to be predicated on what comes after that, to how big it ultimately will be. Will it have an impact? Yeah, I think it'll have a bigger impact on this Jurassic movie than any of the others, because with the other movies too, it was almost critic proof. It's giant dinosaurs eating people. But the longer and more of those movies you make, like you're saying, the longer you do that, the novelty wears off, and you're expected to have something more than that. So what will they be? Like I said, right now, critic reviews, 88%. Word of mouth, we're going to have to wait till it really opens this weekend, but I think it will definitely have an impact. Rob, how do you see it impacting the film?
Well, I mean, look, reviews are important. You want people to have good word of mouth. Look at Top Gun. There's an example of great word of mouth. I mean, I just think that in a Jurassic Park movie, honestly, John, if you were to ask me what these movies were about, I mean, sure, it's about man tampering with forces, the power of God.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to bring back extinct animals just because you can doesn't mean you should. Power of God. Don't mess with God. That's one of the themes of this movie, which is fine. And then when you do, because men are dumb, and the power of God is unleashed, and you can't control it because you're just a man, and dinosaurs are running around, they're going to eat you. Like literally at the end of the day, what else are dinosaurs going to do? Dinosaurs don't know. There's food running. I'm hungry. It's not like dinosaurs are like, you know what? We're gonna take over the world now. They don't have that. Like, what are these? So what is your story? And now we're going to bring back 2 generations of characters we cared about that are going to try and not get eaten. I mean, that's literally, I mean, if you look at Sam Neill's character, it's not like he takes his sunglasses off. He's a paleontologist. He's been spending his life digging in the ground looking for dinosaurs. Now he can find dinosaurs. He's not even a paleontologist anymore. There's the dinosaurs. Everything I wondered about, they're right there. I'm obsolete. What am I going to do other than try and not get eaten? I mean, that's literally, and I don't mean to be glib, but what's your plot? Like, what's the story? In this movie, they're like, Blue has his kid taken, apparently. That's what I got from the trailers. Okay, so now you're going to go get a dinosaur and stop. You're going to try and not be eaten by the dinosaurs while you're getting a dinosaur. Like, what's the story, man? I mean, Top Gun, they like bombed an enemy camp and they had to train a bunch of people and everybody, they had character interplay and all this. And what is Ian Malcolm still going to be trying to get with the?
Well, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see.
And by the way, I want it to be great. Like I've said, all I need is people getting eaten by dinosaurs.
You were almost in tears at the trailer,
dude. When I saw because to me the American plains, the story would be, how do we coexist? How do we coexist with dinosaurs? Like, what do like Amazon drivers do when you have dinosaurs on the streets? Do you stop at everyone's house still? Or do you have certain protections to keep you, like when you deliver those Amazon boxes, to keep those raptors from eating you?
Amazon Dinosaur Prime. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, we got Koa1708 who writes, I feel like I'm the only one that prefers the lightsaber fighting style of the prequels over anything else. The sequel trilogy and now ObiWan series make lightsaber duels so boring and clunky. First of all, I agree and I disagree. I completely disagree.
Shouldn't it be McClunky?
McClunky, that the original trilogy, that they were boring. There has never been a lightsaber fight with more inherent drama and power than the lightsaber fight between Luke and Vader in the Emperor's throne room. That is like to me, the greatest scene in the history of film right there. But in pure fighting technique, the prequels, I think they do outshine everything. I mean, George Lucas once said, as the prequels are getting to really launch, he said, look, we've seen lightsaber fights in the original films between a new kid, Luke, who's just really learning the Force, and guys who are way past their prime in an older Vader and older Obi-Wan. We are now going to see Jedi in the prime and what that fighting style looks like. And yeah, that fighting style looks great, but dramatically that fighting style doesn't always translate to any given context or situation. For example, in Obi-Wan, this Obi-Wan hasn't picked up a lightsaber in a decade. And I'm sorry, I don't care how good you are. If you don't throw a basketball, take a shot off the basketball in 10 years, I don't care if you were in the NBA. You're going to hit 20% of your shots, like to at least start, right? So it's not just about the choreography, because the choreography was the best in the prequels, no doubt. But I've always said this, Rob, action without narrative purpose is just visual noise. When you look at the lightsaber fights in the original trilogy, the lightsaber fights were telling a story. Mm-hmm. Not so much in the prequels, really, for the most part, to me. They just had some fantastic, like the lightsaber fight, again, to me, the greatest lightsaber fight ever, in terms of just pure choreography, is still the Obi-Wan Qui-Gon Darth Maul fight. I love that fight from a choreography point of view. I love watching it. It's beautiful. But without a narrative driving it, Like that's why that scene between Vader and Luke in the Emperor's Throne Room, Return of the Jedi, it carries with it the culmination of 3 films of drama and growth and discovery and now confrontation, and the story is being played out as they fight with all these not just practical stakes but emotional stakes in there too. But yes, in the basic sense, the choreography was the best in the prequels. It just was.
Look, I want to bring up Empire. I mean, I love the duel with Empire because Vader's toying with Luke. You know, Luke, he's letting Luke stand his ground, and Vader's using one arm.
But then Luke surprises him.
Well, that's
and gets in a shot.
It's pretty great because he does, and Vader's surprised by that. But eventually, Vader cheats. You know, Luke's standing there, and Vader's like, enough of this. And he starts using his force powers to throw shit at Luke and knock him around. And I'm like, that's not cool. You know, but that's what that whole lightsaber battle in Empire is about. Vader subjugating Luke to the point where you are beaten, you know, and then hacks his arm off. I mean, it's great. But yeah, Luke gets a few shots in. He surprises Vader.
He hits him in the arm. It's the first time we ever heard Vader scream.
Yeah.
Luke gets that shot in his arm and he's
but that's a
then
great.
Then he stopped messing around after
that was a great moment. And that was also dramatic. I mean, like you say, in Jedi, one of my favorite things is when Luke, Vader's stalking around looking for him, and then Luke does that shot that he jumps up with his lightsaber over his head and screams, and then they've got they're fighting like this, and you hear the choral music come up, and dude, come on now. I mean,
so good.
Amazing. That's some amazing filmmaking right there. And that was a fight because Luke is not just fighting for himself or the galaxy, he's fighting for his sister, he's fighting for everything he believed in, you know, and the stakes are huge in that moment. It's great.
All right, next up, we've got Major Tom who writes, so Sony decided to re-release Morbius into theaters despite the fact that it bombed the first time around. Who does that? Somebody who ain't reading the effing room? I guess the movie just bombed. Again, I'm shocked. Okay, I'm not that shocked. Okay, so here's the thing. Everybody completely misunderstood the purpose of them re-releasing Morbius. There was not a single person in Sony that thought, we are going to re-release Morbius to make money. They didn't do that because they knew it wasn't going to make any money. Because here's the thing. If they were re-releasing Morbius in theaters in the hopes of making more money, they would have put some marketing into it to let people know that Morbius is coming back into the theaters. We cover the damn movies. The day before they got re-released is when we found out through a third party tweeting, hey, Morbius is coming back into the theaters today. And we're all like, what? Sony didn't put any effort into even letting anybody know that it was going back in the theaters. The purpose of it was clearly not what it always is, which is to try to gain a few extra dollars, put it out there. This was Sony playing along with the joke. It really was. It seems like an odd choice, but it's exactly what it was. It was Sony playing along with the joke. If they had thought they could make money with it, they would have marketed it, make sure people know that it's back in the cinemas. But even we didn't know it was coming back into cinemas. So, yeah, it was just them doing it for the heck of it, I think.
I agree. And also, they can show a loss and write it off. I mean, not only did they play along with the joke because it's being memed, it was marketing for their home video release. You know, whatever they want to call it. Call it whatever.
That's probably a cheap way to get some more awareness of the home video release.
Yep.
That's probably it. All right.
We're talking about it now, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Next up, Dr. J tips in $20. Thank you, Dr. J, for supporting our channel on that level, man. And Dr. J writes, Marvel casting previously searched for an Alison Brie type, a Michael B. Jordan type, or a Joel Kinnaman type. Now Marvel wants a Sam Raimi type director for Fantastic Four. No, they don't. That's a misunderstanding, but I'll explain that in a second. Now Marvel wants a Sam Raimi type director for Fantastic Four. However, they never approached the person they are name dropping. Is this problematic? No, because listen, first of all, with the Sam Raimi thing, they are not looking for a Sam Raimi type. What the story was before is that Kevin Feige wants to get a director that he doesn't have to be hands-on with. Sam Raimi was one of those directors. But it's not like they're looking for somebody who directs just like Sam Raimi. That's not that at all. So that's just a bit of a misunderstanding. But when looking for an actor, just because you're looking for an Alison Brie type does not necessarily mean you're looking for Alison Brie. You're looking for another actress that'll carry some of those traits and characteristics. That it's easy enough just to say, think about Alison Brie, but it doesn't necessarily mean Alison Brie is the one you're looking for. Like you could say, I'm looking for somebody that's like a Ryan Gosling type, somebody that's got those classical leading man good looks, can do a more subtle emotional depth, and does this. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're looking for Ryan Gosling, but it's a good, easy, quick way to kind of explain what it is you're looking for. So no, it's not problematic in the least to say we're looking for like an Alison Brie type, just because that puts a picture in your head that you can start to figure out what it is they're kind of looking for. And it doesn't necessarily need to be that person. Anyway, Rob, you've been in this industry, working inside the industry for a long time. You've produced, you've directed, you've casted, all that kind of stuff. When you hear that terminology, we're looking for a so-and-so type. Doesn't that just mean you should just then go to that person that you're looking for their type?
Well, I think that you have to, like everybody asks you, if you're casting a part, the casting director will ask you, who do you see in this role? And you're always comparing and contrasting. When you say like an Alison Brie type, somebody who's attractive, approachable, funny, quirky, embodies all of those things all at once. Maybe Alison Brie's too expensive. Maybe you can't get her or whatever. She's working. But people understand when you say Alison Brie type, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's a person that means these different things. In terms of directing, as we all know, Kevin Feige is used to picking people like James Gunn, who'd made $2-3 million movies. Now, James, you're making $175 million Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why Kevin Feige is there making sure he doesn't F up.
Giving direct oversight closely to all the movies, which he has done since the beginning of Marvel, but isn't doing anymore.
Sam Raimi is a director who Evil Dead came out in 1981. And then he already did 3 Spider-Man movies and he did movies like A Simple Plan and a $1 billion Oz movie for Disney. So
actually, it was Paul Feig that did A Simple Favor. Oh no, you're talking about A Simple Plan.
Simple Plan. So Feige knows that I don't need to be on set every day making sure that Sam Raimi gets it. He's already made 3. He's already made one of the greatest comic book movies ever in Spider-Man 2. So I think that's what he's looking for. He's looking for somebody who has that kind of experience that doesn't need their hand held. So I think that's what is going on. But we all need, look, how do you explain to somebody what it is you want? We all compare and contrast. I need something like this. And I don't think it's necessarily that you can't get them. I mean, somebody might say, I need an Alison Brie type. They might not even think Alison Brie is correct for the role.
Right.
But they think somebody like her that also
carries
has
some of those same characteristics.
Absolutely. And so that it's just an easy, like, well, what is it? It's Die Hard on a boat.
Right.
It's
Under Siege.
Under Siege. And then people go, oh, I get it.
So you get Bruce Willis, right? No, we don't. We're not looking for Bruce Willis.
We can't do Bruce Willis. But my favorite is when it goes all the way around. It's like, we need to do Die Hard, but in a building.
Yeah, it's called Die Hard. All right. Next up, we got, or is that it? Is that it? Oh, no, there's more. All right. Next up, we got Korea Got Soul, who writes, hey, John and Rob, I hope you're having an awesome day. We are so far, thank you. Did you guys ever catch Prehistoric Planet on Apple TV? It's narrated by the one and only fantastic David Attenborough. It's pretty fascinating to see dinosaurs acting just like animals today. All right, thanks for sending that in, man. So, I will admit something. 2 or 3 years ago, I got kind of hooked on getting on YouTube and going down the YouTube rabbit holes of looking up these little nature, like these 5 to 10 minute long clips from David Attenborough. And it's always narrated by David Attenborough.
They're amazing.
Ray really hates them. He hates it because I would pop one on because he'd be working in my house, right? And I'd pop one on. And it's usually my favorite are cheetah. I don't know why. I'm a sucker for cheetah videos. Like cheetahs hunting down a baby gazelle and killing it. And the baby gazelle's like, ah! And Ray's like, no, I can't hear this, man. This is terrible. And he would like get up and walk out of the room. It was like traumatizing Ray. But I really am hooked on those things. So Apple TV did this prehistoric one and they did the best move possible. They got David Attenborough to do the narration for it. I have not checked it out. It's not, I'm going to admit something. It's not super high on my priority list right now, although I will be curious to check it out at some point. But like, I still haven't finished episode 7 of Stranger Things yet.
Right.
We got ObiWan tomorrow night. We got Ms. Marvel tomorrow night. We got more of The Boys. There's several other things I'm trying to get caught up as well. But have you had a chance to check this out?
Okay, I haven't watched all of it. I watched some of it over this past weekend because I saw a promo. There's lots of promos for this on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I'm like, huh. And I went and looked. First of all, the visual effects are incredible. I mean, they're really astonishing.
It wasn't John Favreau that produced this, was it?
I don't know.
It was somebody quite well known that's the main producer of it. And
yeah, I'm not sure, but I just dipped into it. I fast forwarded through all the credits and was just looking at. It's really good. And again, Elizabeth was like, "What are you watching?" You know, I don't. If I'm in our room, I have to watch something that we both agree to watch. But it's really good, and I'm definitely going to revisit it. What was interesting, and our viewer pointed it out. It's really interesting to watch a show that's about what was the day-to-day life like for dinosaurs. Like, we think of dinosaurs like they're coming to eat us. Well, I mean, they ate a lot of things, but they also had to coexist. So it's interesting to watch the dinosaur documentary from the perspective of what is the day-to-day life in a dinosaur? What does a dinosaur do when they get up in the morning? And that's kind of what this show does. And I really like that because you never see dinosaurs portrayed that way. It's like, this is just the day in the life. Like when you're watching any nature documentary, well, they get up and eat. That's about all they do.
All right. Next up, we've got Great Grabthar's Hammer writes, highly unlikely you guys even care about the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Hey, I'm Canadian, man. I'm one of her loyal subjects, dude. But seeing Her Royal Highness having tea and marmalade sandwiches in a sketch with Paddington Bear was just so wholesome. Also, more people need to watch the Paddington films. Look, let me start with the Paddington films. I've said it before. Everybody thinks I'm joking when I say this. I assure you, I'm not joking. If Paddington 3 ends up being on par, as good as Paddington 1 or 2, I am not saying it is the greatest trilogy of all time, but I'm saying it enters the conversation of the best trilogies ever because Paddington 1 and Paddington 2 are fucking awesome.
They're great.
They are great. It's the smartest thing to come out of the Nicolas Cage, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, is the universal, the professed love of Paddington 2. These movies are great.
But they do what great movies do. They take their subject matter and do the best they can with them. They elevate. No one sat there and go, we're just making a Paddington movie. No, they took these as like sacrosanct, almost holy texts and said, we must do right by this.
And they did.
And they're great.
One of my favorite Twitter accounts out there, I can't remember the name of it. I've mentioned it before, but it's this Twitter account where just every day he puts up a Photoshop that he does of putting Paddington into a famous movie scene. And they're awesome. They look wonderful. And so when I first saw a still of Paddington sitting in Buckingham Palace at a table with Her Majesty, the Queen, I just assumed it was from that. Then I come home later and Anne's like crying, laughing. I'm like, what's going on? She goes, have you seen this? And she showed me a clip. I'm like, wait a minute, they actually made that? And they're like, and Her Majesty actually did this thing where she's sitting down having marmalade sandwiches with Paddington. It is the greatest thing I've seen since Her Majesty did one with Daniel Craig as James Bond. Which
was awesome.
Well, was that for the Olympics that they did that?
Yeah, and Danny Boyle directed it.
That's right. They did this big. If you haven't seen it, it's awesome. They actually had Daniel Craig as James Bond escorting Her Majesty to something else. It's like, oh my God, they got the Queen to do this. And you got to understand, in my house, my wife Anne and her like best friend Corey, they are fanatics for the Queen. They love the Queen. Anyway, this Paddington thing is so freaking adorable. And like seeing the Queen say, yes, I also like to hide a marmalade sandwich in case I get emergency hungry and stuff like that. It's like, oh my God, how'd they get the Queen to do this? It was amazing. Have you seen this video yet? What did you think about it?
It's hilarious. Look, she's totally game. Because you always hear people like when they have to learn, you see stars on like the Graham Norton show talking about like Tom Hanks when he first met the Queen, how they have to like honor protocol.
Yeah.
Like, you can't speak to the Queen unless she speaks to you. And they make it seem like it's so highfalutin. It's nice to see the Queen. I mean, she's just a lady after all. She might be a queen, but she's still a human being. And she's not stupid. She watches TV. She hangs out. She tells jokes. So it's nice to see her play this up, especially now. How old is she now?
She's in her 90s, I believe.
Yeah, and she's still having a good time.
Yeah,
How
she
cool
knows
is that?
She knows to save the crown, she needs to outlive her son. I think at this point, so that's what she's holding on for at this point. It's like, What's Charles's first son's name? It's not Harry. Is Harry the first or second?
No,
son?
it's William.
Philip. Or yeah, that's right,
Yeah,
William.
William.
So she's like, it's got to go to throne's got to go to William. That's the only hope for the monarchy at this point. All right, let's keep going on here. And is this our last one, Jonathan? All right, our last one today comes to us from Disney Gifts by Bryce, who writes, "What an embarrassment of riches this week. Everything Everywhere All Once hits Amazon on Tuesday, Ms. Marvel and Kenobi on Wednesday, and finishing off the week with Prehistoric Destruction and Beauty with Jurassic World. Jurassic Park is my Star Wars. I'm so excited. On top of that, we got another episode of The Boys. I mean, look, it's a really good week. You know what? I think we take for granted and we forget that we are coming out of 2 years of being really starved for content.
Yeah.
And I want to, when we get weeks like this, and we had like months like April where some really fun, great movies came out, I try to remind myself to take a moment and appreciate this. Appreciate that this week I get to watch an episode of ObiWan. I get to go see Jurassic World Dominion. I get an episode of Ms. Marvel, the new MCU. I get to watch another episode of The Boys. And I get to sit at home and watch the best movie of the year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, all this week. And I don't want that to be lost on me. You know what I mean? Whenever I go, okay, so that's an interesting week, then I just remember myself maybe a year and a half ago to when we were just starving for any new content to come out. And
we were looking for things to talk about every week.
Oh God! Well, that's why for a short time I actually I stopped doing the John Campea Show once a couple summers ago.
Yep.
For about 6 weeks, I think, because there was just nothing to talk about, and it was hard and difficult. And yeah, it is. As I now flash back, I try to embody and manifest John Campea from a summer and a half ago, and think, oh my God, this is awesome. We got all this so amazing stuff coming out. And you may love Obi-Wan, you may not love it, whatever, but the very fact that we're just getting it right now. We got a new Jurassic World movie coming out. We got Top Gun in theaters. It's a good time, Rob. It is, as you always say, an embarrassment of riches.
No, it's a great time. I mean, we've got all this great stuff coming out, and with the world, on one hand, gas prices and the uncertainty of the economy and wartime in other parts of the world. I mean, it's so great to have, look, human beings have always lived in uncertain times. Everything hasn't always been good.
Right.
And having great entertainment it offsets all the other craziness that we have in our lives. But to see so much of it happening all at once, and not just great entertainment, but genre entertainment that's specifically directed Marvel shows, Star Wars shows, Jurassic Park shows, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a multiverse show that appeals to anybody who likes all that stuff. I mean, I got a new Cronenberg movie this week. It's great. We're living in a time, and we're just going to get more stuff. Dude, you did forget one thing. From the earth to the... I mean...
Oh, right.
For All Mankind.
For All Mankind.
I keep doing it. For All Mankind Season 3, which... everyone is saying, Bill Hunt from the Digital Bits, he's like, I got the first 10 I got the episodes to watch. And I'm like, you suck. He's like, well, you can come to my house. I'm like, dude, the thing I'm most eager for. And he's like, it's the best season yet. And I'm like, how great is that? We're getting everything we want.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for being here for this installment of Mailbag. Big special thank you to all you guys who used the tip link down below and sent in all those questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported our channel as you did it. And all of us involved with the John Campea YouTube channel, thank you guys so much for your support. I want to thank, of course, sitting beside me, Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at Instagram, RM Burnett. Find me on Twitter, Burnett RM, or find me on my own YouTube channel, Post Geek Singularity, or the postgeeksingularity.com website.
And you guys, of course, can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter, simply at John Campea. Big thank you to producer Jonathan Voico back there running the show today. And guys, that'll do it for us for now. Make sure you come back and join us tomorrow for the next episode of the John Campea Show, live at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We've got a mailbag coming tomorrow as well as tomorrow. That'll be Tuesday. What is that? The 7th? Tuesday, June the 7th, we have our next installment of Movie Club. We'll be talking about Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. We hope you guys will join us for that. We're finishing off our Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's going to be a good time. All right, guys, that'll do it for us for now. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, Bye-bye.